Guys, welcome to CakeWalk Cambridge. I'm Aisha and today we're going to start with chapter 12, Respiration. This chapter goes hand in hand with chapter 11, which is gas exchange in humans, and it's quite an easy chapter. A lot of marks come from this chapter for your exams. So make sure you do this extremely well and you're clear with the concepts. So let's get started. Okay, so this we have covered earlier as well. So this should be extremely easy for you to learn and understand. So what are the uses of energy? So one is muscle contraction, as we discovered in the previous chapter. An increase in physical activity requires more energy, so more oxygenated blood. Now, what is the increase in physical activity virtually? It is basically your muscles moving faster. That is muscle contraction, okay? So muscle contraction requires energy. Then the second one is protein synthesis, which is basically the formation of proteins. So synthesis, the word synthesis is the building up of larger complex molecules from smaller substances using energy and enzymes. Synthesis, the definition of synthesis comprises the use of energy. So protein synthesis, which is the formation of larger proteins, requires energy as well. Third is cell division, which is brought about by mitosis and meiosis. We will learn these in depth in chapter 17. That is my favorite chapter, absolutely. But yeah, so cell division requires energy. Then active transport, as we discovered in its definition, it's the movement of smaller molecules. It's the movement of molecules from a smaller concentration to a higher concentration against a concentration gradient using energy from respiration. So that's again your use of energy. The next is growth, which is a life process. Growth is also brought about by cell division, by mitosis, and so growth requires energy. Conduction of nerve impulses. This we will learn in chapter 14, but nerve impulses are basically electrical signals and messages that run through your nervous system to that work to coordinate your muscles and bones and everything. Okay, it's basically a coordination system. So the conduction of nerve impulses, which is the movement of nerve impulses across your body, requires energy as well. And then maintenance of a constant body temperature. Homeostasis, as we talked about earlier, which we will also look at later in chapter 14 again, is the maintenance of a constant internal environment within set limits. So to bring about these changes, to regulate these changes, these values, the body requires energy again. So these are your uses of energy. You should know at least 5 of these uses for 5 marks. It's that simple. Yes. Okay, next, aerobic respiration. Aerobic. What does aerobic mean? Aerobic virtually means in the presence of oxygen or with oxygen. And respiration, you know, it's the breakdown of nutrient molecules in cells to release energy. So putting these terms together to form a definition, aerobic respiration comprises chemical reactions in cells that use oxygen to break down nutrient molecules to release energy. Okay, so now chemical reactions in cells. So this is your equation for the chemical reaction. In cells is crucial for your definition in chemistry. You get 1 mark for stating in cells. Biology, I'm not really sure how important it is, but you have to state it. You just have to. Oxygen is a must. Aerobic respiration means oxygen has to be present or you're not getting your mark because you're missing the whole point of it being aerobic. Okay. Nutrient molecules, an example is glucose here, and energy is released as a product. Okay, so respiration, this is the word equation. So it's glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide plus water. You should be able to know this at the tip of your fingers. If I wake you up at 3 a.m. and ask you what the word equation or the symbol equation for aerobic respiration is, you should be able to state it. Okay. So glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide plus water plus energy. Okay. So C6H12O6 plus 6O2 gives 6CO2 plus 6H2O. It's your balanced chemical equation. You need to know this, okay? And if you don't balance it, you lose a mark. It has to be balanced. Right? And this is what you should be able to state. Respiration involves the action of enzymes in cells. That is something you have to be able to state. Okay. Now these are the last two things that you'll have to investigate. So one is investigating the effect of temperature on the rate of respiration of germinating seeds, and two is investigating the uptake of oxygen by respiring organisms, okay, and germinating seeds. So we will learn about this in the next few slides. Okay, so this is investigating the effect of temperature on the rate of respiration. So a water bath is basically a dish that contains water at a specific temperature, and this provides an environment for the test tube which is going to be dumped inside this beaker. So here we have a beaker and here we have water, a water bath. So let's say the water is at 50 degrees Celsius. This provides an atmosphere 50 degrees Celsius for this test tube, okay? So we have a plastic tube clipping, we have germinating seeds, and soda lime. Soda lime is basically sodium hydroxide and it absorbs carbon dioxide from the air. Okay, so it decreases the carbon dioxide concentration content in the air. Okay, so we have a capillary tube, which is extremely important in these kind of investigations, and another dish with colored water. Now the water is colored. Why? So we can see a change. You can actually mark the reading, the movement of water. Because if we use like normal water, which is not colored, water is transparent, it's clear. So you won't exactly be able to see the mark that it's coinciding with. Like this mark over here, you can't see it. So making it colored makes it a clear distinction between these graduations. Okay. So what we're going to do is you're going to basically insert a test tube with soda lime inside and germinating seeds. Okay, and let's say the water bath is at 50 degrees Celsius. Okay, now basically the rate of respiration should increase as the temperature increases, because an increase in temperature causes an increase in energy that is absorbed by molecules, so more collisions, more successful collisions, and a faster rate of reaction. Okay, because the molecules have more energy, so the rate of reaction is faster, as we learned in chapter 7. No. Okay, as we learned before in enzymes, I think. Yeah. So basically, what's going to happen is your seeds are germinating. Okay. For them to germinate, you require oxygen. Okay. So oxygen is going to be taken in from the air, and as this oxygen is taken in, it pulls the colored water up. Okay, because oxygen is taken in through this tube. Okay, so to replace the oxygen that has been lost, water is drawn up. Okay, it's a force that, like, it's a suction force that pulls the water up. So what you need to do is basically measure the distance traveled by this colored water using a ruler against the capillary tube, and yeah, you need to measure the change in distance that is traveled. Okay, and you do this for a set amount of time. Let's say um 2 minutes. You use a timer. Okay, and you divide this change in distance by your time to find the millimeters per second. Okay, for the rate of respiration. Okay, now why do we use soda lime? Soda lime basically absorbs carbon dioxide. So if a plant is respiring, if the seeds are respiring, it's going to take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide, right? Now, if it gives out this carbon dioxide, the water is going to go back down. So you're not going to like see that change in distance. The water is not going to keep moving on up. So basically what the soda lime does is it absorbs the product of respiration. It absorbs the carbon dioxide released by the germinating seeds. Okay? And so this causes only the water to move upwards, because only oxygen is being taken in by the seed, and the carbon dioxide which is released by the seed is taken in by the soda lime. So there's no net effect. Only it's like a minus effect. Oxygen is taken out from the air. Okay? And so the colored water moves up. Now, when you're doing an experiment like this to investigate the effect of temperature, you will have to use a range of temperatures. IGCSE requires you to use minimum 3 temperatures, okay? So you can use 20 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius, and 50 degrees Celsius. Just remember not to use too high temperatures like 80, 90, 70, because it denatures enzymes and everything. So you don't want to take a chance, okay? You don't use really high temperatures unless you're investigating the effect of temperature on an enzyme and you want to show denaturation. That's when you use a really high temperature to show that high temperatures have no virtual effect on the rate of reaction because enzyme activity is minimalized. Okay, so that's your effect of temperature on respiration. Okay, now this is a simple respirometer. This is where you'll be investigating the rate of oxygen uptake, okay, by like an arthropod or something. So you have a locust here, which is an organism. You have soda lime again, which absorbs carbon dioxide, which is released via respiration. So this also has the same kind of effect. You have a drop of water of colored dye or colored dye. Usually use colored dye here, and you measure. You use a ruler against this thing. Like you have a scale here with markings. Okay. Okay. Just forgive my drawing. Okay. And you measure the distance traveled by the colored dot in a set amount of time because the locust here will be taking in oxygen, like when it's respiring. So that causes the drop to move forward to replace the taken in oxygen. Okay. And again, you divide the distance moved by the time to figure out your rate of respiration. Also, to show that only living organisms respire, you will first show a locust or a germinating seed here to show the difference in the move, the drop, and otherwise you'll use glass beads. Okay. I don't really recommend you using a dead insect because sometimes you may actually have to kill the insect to use it, and that's not very ethical. So for that simple ethical reason, you will use glass beads or cotton, like not cotton, sorry. You'll use glass beads in front of the cotton wool. Okay, again, here you have a similar experiment to see if oxygen is taken up by respiration. This is quite blurred, but it should be in your textbook and a million past papers. So what happens is you have a water bath to maintain a constant temperature, which is an important key factor of a what's it called? A fair test. Sorry, of a fair test and a controlled investigation. Okay, so what you basically have is soda lime, which again absorbs carbon dioxide released as a product of respiration, and you have cotton wool, okay, which kind of like holds the moisture in the setup. So on one side you have germinating seeds which are living, and on the other side you have seedlings which are killed by boiling. See, again here you're killing the seedlings. So you can use seedlings that are killed by boiling, or you can use glass beads. That works perfectly fine. And a controlled experiment. So what is a control? A control is basically either a variable that is controlled, like that is the temperature over here, which is controlled at, let's say, 25 degrees Celsius by a water bath, or a control is basically setting up an extra experiment to make sure that no other overlooked external factor is affecting the results, and only the experimented factor is what is affecting the results. Okay, so here you have a control that is seedlings killed by boiling, and here again when they respire, these seedlings, oxygen is going to be taken in, so this causes the colored water or the dye, colored liquid, to move upwards to replace the lost oxygen. Again, you measure the distance by the time, and that is to find the rate of respiration. If you just want to see if oxygen is taken up, you just have to look at the movement of the thread of liquid. But on this side here, the thread of liquid is not going to move because the seedlings are killed by boiling, and so they don't really take in oxygen. No oxygen is lost. Nothing has to be replaced. So that's basically it. It's quite an easy concept, really. Okay, now we're going to anaerobic respiration. So anaerobic, which is basically the opposite of aerobic, it is the chemical reactions in cells that break down nutrient molecules to release energy. Same definition as your earlier one, however, without using oxygen. That's the only difference, okay? So anaerobic respiration in muscles. So basically during vigorous exercise, sometimes the muscles are deprived of oxygen because the body doesn't pump blood fast enough to cope up with the increasing needs, the increased oxygen demand, because it's a steep rise, okay? It's a steep increase in energy demand. So anaerobic respiration occurs in cells where glucose is converted straight to lactic acid, okay? That's your equation. You need to know this. You don't have to know the formula, like lactic acid, the chemical formula. It's just glucose to lactic acid, don't include oxygen, carbon dioxide. This comes in many MCQs and they try to confuse you by writing glucose is lactose plus lactic acid plus carbon dioxide. That's all crap. Just go for your first one. Glucose gives lactic acid. Now, lactic acid is basically what is also found in milk. So we will be exploring this acid a little more in later chapters. Um, but yeah, glucose gives lactic acid, and then anaerobic respiration also occurs in the microorganism yeast, where glucose is converted to alcohol and carbon dioxide in a process which is also used for fermentation. So now for this, you will need to know the balanced chemical equation, and that is C6H12O6, which is your formula for glucose, gives 2C2H5OH plus 2CO2. C2H5OH is alcohol, CO2 is carbon dioxide. You add a 2 and a 2 here to make it balanced. This is extremely important. So you have to know this, okay, like without fail, by heart. And once again here, glucose to lactic acid. Very important, okay? Um, yeah. So anaerobic respiration releases much less energy per glucose unit or molecule than aerobic respiration. This is because aerobic respiration occurs in the presence of oxygen. So if I'm not wrong, aerobic respiration releases around 2830 kilojoules of energy, and anaerobic respiration releases 118 kilojoules of energy. That's a huge difference. So you need to explain that aerobic respiration is much more efficient because it releases more energy per glucose molecule than anaerobic respiration does. That's pretty much it. Now, oxygen debt, extremely important concept. Okay, so during rigorous exercise, your body needs an increased um, content of oxygen to aid aerobic respiration for muscles to contract, because muscle contraction requires energy which is produced by aerobic respiration more efficiently than anaerobic respiration. So basically lactic acid builds up in the oxygen, okay, and blood. Sorry. Lactic acid builds up in muscles and blood during vigorous exercise, which causes an oxygen debt. Okay, which basically means that there's insufficient oxygen. Your muscles are deprived of oxygen and you need oxygen ASAP to remove this lactic acid. Now, basically, what lactic acid causes muscle cramps. Okay, it builds up and causes muscle cramps. So to like eradicate this, you need an increased supply of oxygen. So this is taken straight from your syllabus. So you need to outline how the oxygen debt is removed during recovery. So first, what happens is lactic acid builds up in your muscles. As I said earlier in chapter 11, your brain detects an increase in this lactic acid content because of a decrease in pH. So acids have a low pH, so an increase in lactic acid lowers the pH of blood. Now, due to homeostasis, your body has to move, has to adjust, has to regulate to bring its pH back to set limits. So what happens is your brain detects lactic acid, okay, lower pH, okay. So what happens is your heart beats faster, okay, and your breathing gets deeper to increase the volume of oxygen taken in as well. The lactic acid is transported to the liver, very important, and aerobic respiration of lactic acid occurs in the liver. So it is aerobically broken down. So lactic acid plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide plus water. Okay, that is your equation. Lactic acid plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide plus water. Now, this is how your debt is removed, but it's not, so that's how your lactic acid is removed. But to like completely remove your oxygen debt, after exercise, your heart continues to beat fast and deep, okay, to transport lactic acid in the blood from the muscles to the liver, okay, extremely important, trust me, okay, it continues to beat fast. Why? So basically in your structured questions, they can give you a graph which shows your like rate of respiration, and after exercise, there'll be a line, but your rate of respiration will still be increasing or relatively high. And why is this? It is because it's important to transport the lactic acid in the blood from the muscles to the liver. Okay, and your after exercise, your breathing continues to be deeper to supply oxygen for aerobic respiration of lactic acid, and that is how your oxygen debt is completely removed. Okay. So yeah, that was basically your chapter. If you have any questions, you can always email me. I'll drop down my email below. I hope this helped you. Like, share, subscribe to my channel, like this video, turn on post notifications. And I hope this helped you because I really tried my best. It's an important chapter. And don't worry, we'll get through this together.